Hey there, welcome to episode 76 of the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 1:38 in the afternoon on Friday, August 9, 2024. The Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program is aimed at the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem of the greater Vegas area and beyond. Vegas being what it is, people come from far and wide. You never know who's working remotely right here in Vegas, or vice versa. Today's episode is a kind of a group catch-up on several topics, mostly because there was a water main requiring repair. I'll go into some detail about that. But of course, just as I'm hitting the record button to do today's show, because the water has been out, it was supposed to be back on in about 90 minutes, but it's on early. So my lament has come to an end, but still it has been mildly distracting. But we can get on with a pleasant weekend and return to normal, in quotes. But that was one of the reasons I was like, man, I think I'm gonna catch up on a few things that I've been meaning to dive into a little bit more. But we'll catch them all up together. Start updates. See what I did there? Start updates. So hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you are able to find the episode description, wherein I have placed the show notes. They are completely optional today. There's a summary which I will read to you. It's one sentence. And the two shameless self-promotion links. Hopefully you can find them regardless of whether you're able to click on them in the episode description. But here we go. The water main repairs mean no water for the last 24 hours for the second time in a week. So how about a few mini updates packed into one episode? And that's this one. So it's not a best of or anything like that. These are merely catching up on a few things I've talked about previously, and then we'll end on a thing I don't think I've mentioned. But either way, the shameless self-promotion links. By the way, for this audio program, for those links, I always put a host with the presumption that there would be guest, because eventually I would like to have guest links there so you can find their homepage or their LinkedIn profile or whatever the case may be. One of these days I'll get back to having guests. In fact, that's one of the, well, okay, I won't go into it right now, but I'm actually getting closer to being able to focus on websites for my various projects, but I think based explicitly on this water main experience, it's better to just launch things and not talk about launching them, or not even give some indication. And I will say why that is in a moment. But buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. That's DANHUGO. So www.buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo, same spelling. I use these as a way to reach out to people and give updates and links and so on without the need for you to spend any money. Don't feel obligated. Buymeacoffee.com provides a profile page, so I treat it kind of like a freeform link tree or similar. Ko-fi.com is probably better for kind of an announcement style thing. Either way, I should be making better use of both of these in my various entrepreneurial endeavors, and I will endeavor to do just that. And then I won't tell you when I'm going to do that. It'll just happen. And no other links today, like I said, just to catch up on some previous stuff. So there's still interesting things here, though. Don't give up just yet. But do visit those websites. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo for updates and whatnot, out of band. Eventually there'll be links to actual websites and so on. But I still use these because many open source developers and people that are working on entrepreneurial endeavors use the buttons and the resources available. So it's useful, that both of them, both Buy Me a Coffee and to a lesser extent Ko-fi.com. So there you go. Got to support small business if you're going to be a small business. First, let's touch on the water topic. Where I live, there have been ongoing water issues for a long time, since I moved here a few years ago. These appear to have come to a head. Well, actually, technically, I think it was just over a year ago. There was there was a similar situation, shut off the water, effect a repair, but because it was the end of day and the repair was supposed to take less, hours instead of all day, I believe the management of this place said, turn the water back on. And the plumber said, okay. What is it? Malicious compliance. So I assume it was a he. I didn't see, but I think all the plumbers I've ever seen working here are male. So I'll say he and cross my fingers. He apparently just went and turned the water on 100%. So completely off to 100%. And it literally blew the bottom out. Now, not like explosively, but ruptured or otherwise cracked the bottoms, which were probably, that means that they were probably rusted a little bit and needed repair or replacement anyway. I think it was like 13 water heaters. Mine was one of them, so that was fun. Little side note, the entire complex where I live, and it's a nice place. It's not awful. I'm not really complaining too much, but they had just put in some smart sensors, so they have moisture sensors, smart thermostat, etc. Not truly a smart home, but so they have two moisture sensors, one under the sink in the bathroom. No, I'm sorry, in the kitchen. I said, why not in the bathroom? They said, because condensation usually trips the sensor. So we just go ahead and don't put in a sensor. That makes me laugh. And the other sensor, moisture sensor, was in so luckily hot water heaters have a tray that they rest in so that when this happens, the water, hopefully a slow leak, will be caught in this tray. So they're basically sitting in a big pie pan. And in my case, the water leak matched, this may be by design, matched the rate of flow through an overflow drain, and the tray, the pie pan, was filled up with water almost to the top. So it wasn't leaking, it wasn't running over, so that was cool. And there was water shooting out the side of the building. And the reason I discovered this leak was it was like 3 a.m. or something, and I hear water shooting out of the side of the building outside. I'm like, what is that? Like, where could that be coming from? And luckily that moisture sensor didn't go off, being fully submerged underwater. So good times. That was a while ago though. So 1 week ago there was a bite the bullet repair where they shut the main for the whole place, and it was offered to I think it was almost 2 days, and there was a warning about that. So they said, hey, the 31st we're going to be shutting off the water, July 31st, and they shut it off for 2 days, and that was fun. And then they said we're going to need to complete the repairs in a week. And I will say that right around where the repairs were being done, they had to put in, I don't even know how many, I guess I could count, but maybe 20 room dryers. If you've ever painted a room or had any sort of water issues, there are these little, they rest on the floor. They look like a little snail shell, and they just blow air. They just keep air moving so that it aids in drying. So if you're drying paint or trying to dry walls, so I'm going to guess the walls were completely soaked, and they have cut the walls out. So the what do you call it? The wall frames are exposed, insulation and so on. So they had to cut half the wall. So that's going to be another fun little project. But these air blowers have been running continuously for a week now. So they said, we're going to have to complete the repairs in a week. Now, luckily, none of this has been occurring near me. So it's just been one of those like, oof, that would suck. So the bite the bullet repair was apparently a little bit worse than they had planned. They had to get another part of a pipe. I've not gone down the engineering hat. I left it on the clothes tree here. I didn't want to get too into this, but they apparently need to get a new section of pipe that was larger for a different part of the system that also needed repair. Apparently the inspection yielded some, were the people doing this were they here from Boeing? So problems were found. There was another planned shut shut off. I was going to say shut down, but shut off, which did take place yesterday. So the 8th, first thing in the morning, water is off because, before, I don't know what they're thinking. Before most people would begin their day, let's go ahead and shut the water off. So not like, hey, we're going to shut the water off at 10 a.m. It was, we're going to shut it off like when the sun comes up. So good times. I don't have other people, especially children, to worry about. I can only imagine. So the water was off for another full day. But like I said, it just came on like 20 minutes ago. So yay. I stored some water. So I had like 5 gallons of tap water. I have other drinking water. It's survivable. So it was a little bit of a distraction. It did kind of put me off of being creative for this morning's episode, which has now become this afternoon's episode. But let's get down to the entrepreneurial updates. First of all, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I mentioned a proactive interest. Now, this was probably at the beginning of last summer, so just over maybe a year, maybe 15 months ago, maybe 14 months ago. It was at the conclusion of our Genius Roundtable, which I'll talk about soon today. I said I was talking about it during our roundtable. We really should do a retrospective look at the downtown project because it was a real entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem experiment. But it was a legitimate startup scene. There was real funding. There was real diverse focus. So it wasn't all tech, which is a mistake Vegas is making now. They're focusing too much on tech. So it was retail. It was food and hospitality. It was consultancies. It was service businesses. It was the art district. It was some tech startups. So there was a diversity in the focus of these different startups. Now, the infrastructure to support all of this may or may not have been sufficient. So that's what the goal of the retrospective would be, to talk to people who were here in Vegas, or attached to the downtown project. Maybe they were remote and visiting or whatnot. Those are some of the questions, to get feedback about, quite literally, what worked and what didn't, so that in the present day Vegas quote unquote startup scene. Did I have to clear my throat and do I also was doing air quotes. I said too much. The startup scene in Vegas is basically assuming a lot of things without looking at actual data, right? You have a startup scene that was in the same footprint that people are looking at today, downtown Las Vegas, rather than examine in greater detail what worked and what didn't by talking to people and looking at real outcomes. There's always this, I used to talk to people back then, back in, say 6-7 years ago. And I'd say, how is downtown? We got plenty of stuff going on. We got lots of investments and so on. They weren't local investments. So eventually they realized that the return on community notion was broke. Well, that was pretty quickly. That saw the departure of Andy White. The return on community kind of went out the window, and the focus on only investing in downtown project startups and entities kind of went out the window. So then they were casting a much wider net, making investments beyond the downtown project, probably beyond Nevada. And you see the same thing from Startup NV. And I don't know if there are any other. I think they've kind of captured everything. So Startup NV, gatekeeper to the present day startup scene as far as investment goes, and they focus on tech, probably too much. So the value proposition of having a retrospective would be to look at and investigate and ask about what worked and what didn't. What were the missing pieces? I always say the last mile was where things kind of fell apart. In other words, there were good intentions. There was some infrastructure. There was some money. There was some desire, although I don't know if it was coordinated well enough. People were invited to come to the greater Vegas area, mostly downtown, but some people would be downtown, but they weren't necessarily located downtown, so they were in a larger geographical area sometimes. The notion was bring your startup idea, whatever it is, to downtown Las Vegas and be a part of this scene and deliver happiness and all that. I don't mean to diminish that, but that was the basic idea. So, and I would love to ask some people about that in a structured way. So once you had people good to go and they're going to come to Vegas, they would make that journey. And that last mile was like, this is something that comes up in logistics and like delivery services, UPS, postal service, running fiber optic cable, coaxial cable for cable TV, DSL, phone lines, electricity. It's getting out to the actual house or delivery point is where things get the most complicated, because you're not delivering to one place. There's always different stories, different conditions, different circumstances. So the last mile, in my analogy, is various people with various levels of skill and background and experience creating companies and being entrepreneurial. We're all coming here with different types of expectations and so on. So it's that a little bit of chaos going on. And from the time, contemporaneously, I had spoken to a few of the people that were having, I will say, not the best time with not the most ideal outcomes from their attempts or efforts. And some of the comments, again, contemporaneously, were, man, I was told that there'd be more mentoring or that there'd be more in the way of educational, now not like classes, but so something a little bit more than mentoring, like a workshop or something. And there were those sorts of things available. Work in Progress, I think, had some of these things. And yeah, there was just this disconnect. And that's the thing that I think is worth exploring, because when you're going to create an environment and invest money in creating yet another innovation, now they call it an innovation corridor, which would allegedly exist near the Innovation Center and UNLV and the Tech Park and sort of down towards the airport. So it would be in Clark County until they rename it to Las Vegas County, if that takes place. So when they build another innovation corridor, it will be completely blue sky, external consultants looking at other cities and other startup scenes, innovation hubs, technically an innovation corridor. So it's not a startup scene, but a startup scene would evolve or emerge from a properly stocked innovation corridor, you would think, or they would. I think it's a lot more complicated than that, and I don't think you can just build it and they will come, to make a movie reference. But all that said, the missing piece to this is that in this geography, in the last, say, 5 to 10 years, so in a window that ended 5 years ago, started 10 years ago, there was an effort to create an innovation hub, say, of different types of innovation, not just technology, with different types of people and different types of skills, different skill sets, different areas of entrepreneurial focus, and of course, different outcomes. So there was a lot of programming around getting people to run into each other, the serendipitous collision model. Did that really work? Was that useful? I heard from some people that they really would rather have spent time, or they did spend time, hey, I never see you at these various events. I'm working on my startup. I don't really have time to hang out. So the retrospective would be getting a structured collection of inputs about, again, what worked and what didn't. Now, I don't think that the people that are driving the current notion that Las Vegas will be the next Silicon Valley, I've mentioned this before, what a fantastic notion. They don't seem to care about retrospectives. I didn't get a lot of interest in my initial canvas. Now, this could change. I can't say that I reached out to hundreds or thousands of downtown project refugees, but part of the challenge, of course, would be reaching them. And I don't know that people would actually take an interest. So how much time to spend, I did actually create the retrospective question set, like version 1. There could be more added, but I don't think they care. Much as people, when they look at Silicon Valley, they look at post 1993. The Clinton administration had just come in. Al Gore invented the internet, and money started to flow. VC funds started. The notion was, oh, if we inject a bunch of capital and place a bunch of bets, if 10% of them pay off, we could actually make money net, right? You'll lose money on the 90%, but you fail fast, as the saying goes. So most people believe Silicon Valley started in 1993, and that's where they look. Like, oh, all we have to do is have a bunch of money and a bunch of startups, and that may have been Downtown Project model, since Tony Hsieh, the late Tony Hsieh, of course, did move to Henderson and then Las Vegas from Silicon Valley. So it's possible, and by the way, I read his Delivering Happiness book, and I did the audiobook that he reads in his voice, and I always recommend author-read audiobooks when possible, because he places the emphasis where he wanted it to be placed, right? So it's a good one. It's worth flipping through retrospectively, of course. It was after he had passed away in a tragic accident. So in listening to him read his own book, it was sort of telling, and I won't go into that too much here. The retrospective is not about Tony Hsieh or placing blame. It's really for looking forward. So if you look at Silicon Valley, if you start in 1993, you might think all we need to do is, some capital, some places where people can meet, a lot of coffee shops and internet. What else could you need? And I always remind people that Silicon Valley started in 1944-ish, when Professor Terman moved from, I think he was at MIT. I can never remember. He might have been at Columbia, but he was a radar engineer and whatnot. He moved to Stanford, to the Bay Area, became the dean of engineering at Stanford, and is frequently, I don't know if he would have accepted this title, but the father of Silicon Valley. So he was instrumental in getting early government monies flowing out west. He convinced Shockley to move and start Shockley Semiconductors after he won his Nobel Prize for transistors. He convinced Hewlett and Packard to start their company. He really was sort of the I'm not going to say the gatekeeper, but the gateway to this does look like an interesting place to do some things. And, what do you call it? A collision of government money, San Francisco, Bay Area, the blimps, I guess they're not dirigibles, blimp hangars at Moffett Field. The Sunnyvale was a port of call for the Navy. So that it was sort of a military influenced area. There was government money flowing. There were the schools, Stanford, not a bad school. And so a lot of things aligned, and he arguably kind of lit the fire, ignited the rocket engine that would be Silicon Valley. So that started in 1944. It's important to realize that you cannot simply choose a point in history that's convenient. And this is why I think a retrospective is actually important, because it would be in the same footprint. It would be in the same geography within a decade. It would require people to participate. And from what I understand, some people don't want to look back into the past and dredge up bad memories, and that's fine. But either way, I don't know that the retrospective would go, so I've kind of backed off on that. However, a survey engine is something that is a part of Smart Social for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, and we'll talk about that briefly in the next section of my notes. But a survey engine that can manage rolling surveys, so we're not just going to ask one time, how's your coffee? But if you ask the same person, how was your coffee this time? And I've long had this view that general mental health in a neighborhood, city, county, right? If you allow people to simply indicate, this is sort of like a network referral survey, right? So how likely are you to refer a friend? Can be a valuable single data point, right? One question, get one answer, can be very telling. So similarly, if you can ask the same person whenever they feel like it, not hounding them, but Do you feel better or worse than last time you answered this question, or something along those lines? Not even a 0 through 10 or 1 through 10, just better, worse, right? Some relative. And I don't know how many, because a lot of things, well, okay, just, do you feel better or worse right now? And you would get a general sense at, neighborhood or city scale. If there's an uptrend or a downtrend, you wouldn't have an absolute value because who knows? My happiness and your happiness are totally different. But if I feel generally better today, you might correlate that with like, Vegas has less road construction going on right now. Or, it's super hot. Or, we're in the middle of a lockdown, right? So you could actually get some sense. And I think that's actually still valuable. But I think a rolling survey where you can start to see some trends about, hey, what do you think of the startup scene here? Or, hey, what do you think of the fun economy? Is the Formula One racetrack construction better this year than last year? Is it a negative or positive impact? These sorts of questions. So I've been talking about a rolling survey for a while. The rolling survey makes much more sense since the interest in a retrospective seems light, thin on the ground. So the retrospective, if it were to emerge from this, it would be based on the rolling survey engine, not on a separate effort. So it would just be one shot. But here's the thing: some of the people who are Downtown Project, I will use the word refugees, but only somewhat humorously. So that's not a commentary on their state of affairs. Some of the people, though, from that time are still here. And so it would be interesting to compare then and now. So the rolling survey notion over with a big multi-year gap should still work. So, like better or worse than last time. But at any given time, we should be able to apply similar questions then and now anyway, because again, same footprint. So we're not looking to measure drastic blue sky stuff so much as what is working now. Is it working better than last week, last month, last year? Are the plans that are upcoming, are they bringing about optimism, etc.? So I think there are opportunities to use a rolling survey model. And you're starting to see these now with political surveys. This is an election season, which has suddenly taken a weird turn, of course, several. So there was recently and I cannot remember the name of the polling company, so I might talk about this more in greater detail in a future episode. But there's a polling company, I guess, a polling entity of some sort that has started to focus on asking the same people to re-answer the same question, so they can see a individual change in opinion, an individual delta. Some traditional pollsters think this is a bad idea because there are some inherent bias in asking the same individual. On the other hand, in reality, and so statistics is not, it's a model of reality, but a statistical model that actually takes into account specifically individual changes, removes the random population sample, but adds in reality, because real individuals do, I was going to say change their minds, but their opinion can evolve based on new information, based on a change of, just a change of opinion, right? A change of feeling, the vibe, as people keep talking about. So having a rolling survey in general is starting to catch on. So I think this might be a good time to start pursuing that. So we'll see a rolling survey in the information sharing platform that I'm going to speak about next. And so let's do that. I have talked about MyMuni and Welcome previously. These are Innovate for Vegas Foundation open source projects. They're still very much in the, hey, does anybody want to work on these? State right now. There has not been much in the way of local innovator participation, unfortunately. However, we're getting more interest from outside of Nevada, and I suspect many people utter that phrase when it comes to certain things. So my municipality, my community is essentially a local news, but except that that's oversimplifying. But I call it a local information sharing platform. It's intended to focus on people who live in a particular area. So it It would facilitate the more mundane things like water outages or internet access and so on. Some of the important stuff there would be, again, rolling surveys that would be a part of open data sets, like internet access, consistency of access to services like electricity, utilities like electricity and water, and internet access and cell phone coverage, access to other services like medical, is there a hospital nearby, transit services, what are the roads like, sidewalks, are pedestrians able to move around on sidewalks? And some of the places where I'm going to say about a mile away from where I live, sidewalks kind of end, even though we're in the city of Las Vegas, city limits. So there are some spots where there's just no sidewalks. That can be a problem for pedestrians. Not only pedestrians, but also accessibility for people who are not necessarily on foot, but are not driving. So bike lane safety, detritus moved into bike lanes. I'll see occasionally construction. And if you ever want to see a city with more construction than roads, that's Las Vegas. So I'll see construction signs moved into bike lanes or onto sidewalks, blocking the path for anybody who's in a wheelchair. So there's all kinds of stuff where you could actually take input from people who live here, right? Not something a tourist would be, or a visitor to the city would be thinking, oh, I'd like to make a comment about my water bill. Where do I look? So the welcome component of this is a similar notion, but with a focus on transient presence. The MyMuni platform might focus more on like having a login, having an account that you log in and you participate in discussions in these rolling surveys. Whereas if you are a visitor, I don't really want to log in and participate in these things, but I am interested in knowing where the best donuts can be found, or which coffee shop should I go to, or what do I do if I lost something? And these are all examples of service modules that we've kind of got on the back burner, on the back burner. So, so the update, yesterday? Yeah, yesterday we have weekly office hours meetings for Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We are presently configuring some of our principles and methods so that volunteers from other places, not Vegas, can collaborate on open source community elevation projects. Some of this stuff is kind of left to chance, or there are cultural differences between different cohorts. So, we do it this way and you do it that way, and they're not going to fit. Setting some sort of, I'm not going to say standards, but setting up some basic communication protocols. It's what computer people want to do. Having these things in place should ideally enable people to collaborate on projects that they're not like a part of from the beginning. So the notion is to enable contribution to projects across localities. What does that mean? Well, MyMuni used to be called MyVegas. So MyMuni and Welcome, of course, welcome to fabulous Las Vegas. But MyMuni and Welcome need not be Vegas-centric in the slightest. So now we can ask people from other places, other people who are in former brigades from Code for America. They sunset that program in 2023. People who are interested in participating, hey, I don't live in Las Vegas. That's okay. Two things. One, we have 40 million people visiting here. We'd love to have those 40 million people trying out your code. Two, you live in a place with people. Whatever we work on here might be useful to you there. So don't feel like you're only innovating for Vegas. And as we say, you don't need to innovate in Vegas to innovate for Vegas. So enabling contribution of effort. So civic volunteers have time, effort, and expertise to contribute to projects. We want to make that easier and streamlined so that people who are contributing their time feel like they've made a worthwhile investment of that time, and that the other people that are also working with them feel the same way, and vice versa. So it's a lofty goal, but an essential component to make these various projects that we have and other people have, other cohorts, other former brigades, other civic volunteer groups, people who are interested in elevating their communities and fixing problems and so on. So if we can enable people to discover, or as I say, the 3 C's, connect, communicate, and collaborate, if we can enable that with some principles and methods, not rules, these, make it work for you, but some basic starting points that should ideally make it a little bit easier to communicate. Well, connect, communicate, and collaborate, of course. So once we get some of this stuff sorted, the initial, the MyMuni welcome pair will manifest in a visible, like a named platform here in Vegas called In Las Vegas, which is going to be built with the two components. It will actually be a kind of a launched version of the combination of MyMuni and Welcome, which will be another thing, which will, as we test all this stuff and get it working in a Las Vegas context, we'll have something that people could use anywhere as a starting point. So I'll get into that in the future when we actually have something to show and tell. But we'll probably launch in Las Vegas initially with, so it's a modular platform. That's the design anyway. So if you imagine inlas.vegas, if you had content creators.inlas.vegas, right? Content creators in Las Vegas. So that SEO is okay. So the URL would have the content creator keyword, that the subdomain could be content creator, could be calendar, could be meetups, could be events, could be bars, could be food, could be shows, could be anything. And that's by design, of course. So discovery of local content creators would be interesting because ideally, if this works, well, first of all, it's a good proof of concept. Second, if we enable easier or more prolific discovery of local content creators, and there are tons of them, food, resort, entertainment, things to do, etc., right? Everybody's creating content about living in Vegas, grew up in Vegas, Vegas native, real estate in Vegas, best restaurants, best things to do. The list goes on and on. So making it easier to discover these people, Instagram is Instagram, not my favorite. But if we can come up with some novel ways to do this, if we can capture the favor of content creators, that might be useful in general. But it is a good proof of concept, I think, to get started. We'll almost certainly have a discovery and following scheme for local mobile vendors. I have mentioned before my involvement with food trucks. I actually founded a mobile vendors association in the Bay Area with the help of the Southern California Mobile Food Vendors Association, Matt Geller. And we formed one here, the Nevada Mobile Vendors Association. Didn't really make it through the pandemic. That was an interesting time for all small businesses. But the fact is, I have a whole bunch of ideas for discovery and following of mobile vendors. They're never right where I left them. They were right here yesterday. So formalizing a platform component that enables discovery, locating, and maybe even booking. That might be a separate thing. But either way, so discovering local vendors and a rolling survey implementation, of course. So this seems timely. This seems like a time where people would like to express an opinion and measure it across populations. We still really need a proper public calendar, so that might be in there also. It turns out public calendar is really just is a implementation of a real calendar, not a WordPress plugin. Some people have implemented dumb ideas here in Vegas to try to, I don't even want to go into that, but an actual calendar server that would support peer sharing, calendar subscriptions, but also virtual calendars and some other things, some ideas that I've had for a very long time based on mobile vending, based on moving businesses, moving customers, right? Mobile vendor, mobile customer, those are interesting problems. So a calendar is actually a component, a feature, not a feature, it's a component, it's a piece of a few different projects. So a public calendar would really be an implementation of a real calendar, which will come in handy for a variety of things. So these are some of our starting points. Over time, we should be able to add new feature modules. And of course, nothing about this is Vegas specific. As I mentioned, MyMuni and Welcome project should be adaptable to any locality. no matter where any contributors live or elsewhere. And of course, the hope would be that people visiting Vegas taking advantage of the welcome side. And there's not like a dividing line, but it's really just design considerations, right? When you're designing something, know your user, know your customer. So not everybody will be living here, familiarity. On the other hand, you don't want to treat somebody who does live here like they don't live here, right? So it's really just some design considerations. But people who do visit here, who can take advantage of what we're building in our smarter smart city, maybe they could go home and find something similar there, or they might take an interest. And we're definitely going to be advertising the Innovate for Vegas Foundation and then other contributors. Attribution is a huge thing with our foundation. So contributors get full credit for their work and their name is mentioned. And, there's no, that's not like it's not intended to sound like a prize, but this doesn't always happen. It happens a lot in open source software development. But there are some cases where volunteer projects, the volunteers slip through the cracks. Like, oh, that's right, we forgot to get everybody's name. So that's not going to be the case. So yeah, the idea would be to have 40 million people visiting the greater Vegas area every year, have access to this sort of resource, and they can say, oh, wow, this is useful. And we can, of course, through the magic of co-creation, learn from people using the platform and grow, adapt, iterate. So speaking of visitor flux is the measurement of like a field passing through an area. If you imagine the flux of water through a faucet, it's the water flowing through the opening of a faucet. So visitor flux, people passing through Vegas. We have about a 40 million person visitor run rate, like I've said, and I did verify that a couple of weeks ago with LVCVA, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. LVCVA.com, I believe, is their website if you're curious, but I've talked about that and I will talk about it again in the future. So yeah, briefly, 40 million people, the run rate for this year, it was about that last year, pretty close. Helped no doubt by Super Bowl, Formula One, the fun economy in general. Don't let nobody fool you. The fun economy is the economy here. They want economic diversity, but some of the things they talk about would place the fun economy at risk, mostly because it would be placing the people who are the fun economy. Think service industry, think hospitality, think small businesses. They would place them at risk in favor of these big giant events that can damage their businesses, or pricing out employees. Let's have a tech business. Let's have a tech sector here. Let's have startups. We got to import talent from other places. We got to pay salaries. Now we got to cost of living will go up. And remember, during the pandemic, rent went up 25 to 40%, which priced out a lot of service industry and other people that are the fun economy. Those are the people that make it go. So the thing, though, is that 40 million people, the fun economy is a component, but what if you can leverage, I don't want to make it sound like the visitors are playthings, but if we can leverage the fact that 40 million people visit here for the fun economy mostly, if you can build upon that and engage people visiting with local innovation, non-local innovation, right? Like, hey, you're in town. I was at the High Def show in May, I think it was, just a trade show here in Vegas. And there was a company that's making a in-room, it's the target audience is a hotel room, in-room coffee pour-over machine. So rather than supplying the Keurig disposable, they have since become more environmentally friendly, but let's just say Keurig K-Cups. They're not great if you've ever had a K-Cup. I think some of the more modern ones, they're doing Nespresso, but I've seen both in my travels. You can make a decent coffee in your room. Don't forget, if you use tap water in your room, just don't bother. But if you use the $25 bottle of bottled water that's in the no honor bar, don't ever touch those bottles. Otherwise, they have senses, they measure. But if you want to make a coffee in your room, so their idea is, we can use a pour over machine, and it's a little kind of a complicated mechanism with a little moving water dispensing, not a jet, but like a little tiny, like the end of a gooseneck kettle, right? So it's supposed to wet the bed of the coffee and pour over would, completely automated. Very nice. So when I was speaking to them, they said, "Oh, we're trying to talk to people that have hotels here, so we can try this out." So if you can imagine a loop that's configured to enable a small company doing something innovative like that, so that fits into the fun economy because they're aiming at hotel room or resort room guests. So if you could say, "Hey, let's put this in rooms and let's have people try it and provide some feedback," if we can actually provide that gateway, then we could, people could be doing this all the time. During CES, when we had our Maker Innovator meetup, I was speaking with Eric Pan from Seed Studios. He was our they were the main sponsor of this event. So it was a Seed Studio event. Innovate for Vegas Foundation kind of helped facilitate. We were discussing the fact that people come here for the fun economy. They don't come here to see innovation. So you really have to kind of wedge yourself into the fun economy. Like, hey, come on down to the Innovation Center and check out the latest software projects. I'm here to gamble and see a show, watch a sporting event, right? I didn't come down here to go see your little demo. But if you bring the demo to the people, or they can try things out in the rooms or in the common areas like the casinos and so on, could be interesting. So taking advantage of visitor flux, not only with our Innovate for Vegas projects, not only with the In Las Vegas platform, but with this other thing. It's an idea that I spoke about unfortunately, with LVGEA, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance. Spoke about it with them, I'm going to say about 10 years ago. It was not immediately when I moved here, but it was kind of soon after, maybe a year in. And I went to them and I said, "Hey, there's all these startups in downtown and you have all these tourists coming here on the strip. How come there's no way to bridge that?" And they said, "That is a really good idea." And then nothing ever happened because this is Vegas. The fun economy is something that is not going to go away anytime soon, and you may as well try to take advantage of it. I will tell a very brief story about a farmer's market in downtown Sunnyvale, California. It used to be set up every Saturday morning along Murphy Avenue in downtown Sunnyvale. And the businesses on Murphy would count on the foot traffic because people were coming there for the farmer's market. And since they're there, I'll go into that restaurant, I'll go into that retail store, I'll go into that coffee shop. So at some point they had to tear up the street to put in some plumbing, probably. That seems to be a thing. Probably some sewer lines or something. So no more farmers market. That means foot traffic. You could still visit the stores, so you could still access the sidewalks, and there were ways to cross the street. But there were big open areas, so it was kind of a mess. Business suffered. The farmers market moved to the train station parking lot, and the merchants, the vendors, the booths, the local farmers, the people running the event said, "Man, it is much easier to set up and much more accessible. The parking lot is much better a venue for this." So they wanted to stay there, and the Murphy Avenue merchants were freaking out. And I think they even tried to sue them and said, "Hey, you got to bring that thing back here," because they were not equipped to have this inbound marketing bonus happening for them. I will mention, however, that one person, his name was Kenny, and he owned a coffee shop, and I am totally spacing on the name of the coffee shop. Can't remember. There were 3 coffee shops on Murphy Avenue. So his was the cool one. I used to go there every day and work on my projects when it was cool to work in a coffee shop and co-create with other people. I would get feedback from people and so on. So Kenny was a cool kind of outside the box thinker anyway. He had 25-cent refills. You could sit in his coffee shop all day and spend like $5 or less, $3 maybe, $2. I mean, I was drinking a lot of coffee, but you throw some tips in there. Maybe you get a snack. You're not spending $20-$30. You're spending $5. So he was really forward thinking, very, very nice family owned business. His wife also worked there. So it was fun to see him get it where no one else did. He got a booth at the farmer's market for his coffee shop, and he was selling out all of the coffee he could make every Saturday. And by the way, hey, when you're visiting downtown Sunnyvale any day, it doesn't have to be today, don't forget our coffee shop is right over there. You can walk, the sidewalks are still accessible, etc. So he took advantage of the change in circumstance to capitalize on it. So capitalizing on our visitor flux is something that could be done more effectively, in my opinion, and that's another focus for another episode. So yeah, I'll have more to say about that when we implement this. The idea, though, will leverage heavily the information sharing platform. So I kind of need to do those in a serial fashion, not parallel, so I don't go nuts. When can I take a moment and use the restroom? I don't even have any water. How can I plan for that? No, seriously though, the one will be making use of the other, so they can't both be completely parallel. Although, I'm not going to say they haven't started. Enough about that. The Genius Roundtable is something that I wish we could do. It's been placed on hiatus for the moment. There was supposed to be another Genius Roundtable, Roundtable 2. Impossible to find people who were interested. So here's the problem. It's a frustrating problem, but it is a reality. The people who were involved in our first attempt, they did some good things in the first meeting. We had 6 meetings, 1 a month. The first meeting, very cool. Second meeting, probably even a little bit more productive than the first meeting. Yeah, I'm going to say yes, more productive. Third meeting, not as productive. Fourth, fifth, and sixth, not worth it. Total garbage. So we could have stopped at 3. There was not a real interest in spending the time or the effort required to do what the goal was. The goal was to become informed about our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem from the perspective of the entrepreneur. So everybody participating was supposed to be entrepreneurial, which was true. However, entrepreneurs don't necessarily want to spend time learning about anything but what they're doing. So I think the take home was that, yeah, what's in this for me? They had to have a longer view, which is ironic because entrepreneurs have to have a longer view. So if you're going to learn about the quote unquote startup scene, the economic conditions, what we need, what we can improve on, that's where the retrospective emerged from, was these discussions, although it's something I've wanted to do for a while. You have to be proactively interested, and the value proposition is this, and we had the Startup Resource Center in the plans at the time. When you participate in the roundtable and you gain this extra insight from the focused discussion and the actual analysis of some of the components, the elements that make up our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, we combine that with a retrospective study on what people encountered for the first time in the downtown project. We add in a rolling survey of what's working and what isn't. So as a roundtable participant, you become sort of a de facto mentor for incoming, aspirational, nascent, maybe you're relocating. So all these startup opportunities would come your way first, right? To be the entry point. The whole notion of Startup Resource Center was to be a starting point, a proper starting point, not do you know these 5 people? Do you know where this location is? I don't know. I don't know any of these things. And that's what advice people were given. And that goes back to when I said the last mile was always a problem. So I don't see that being fixed. So the Genius Roundtable was a component of a larger picture to try to make a smarter or more functional last mile. The first mile of your startup journey here in Greater Vegas. So that really, you would need to find people that are actually interested. Intellectual curiosity is key. If you want to drink the Flavor Aid, the headlines, the hype, the LinkedIn headline posts. Oh, the post that says we're going to be the next Silicon Valley got all the attention. The one that says, wait a minute, we actually have to do something to make that happen. Nobody cares about that part. If the info sharing platform can help with engagement across a larger part of Greater Vegas, so if we can focus on entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem more so than does our traditional local media, they kind of suck at it actually. If we can actually do that, the one possibility is engagement with more people who might say, oh, I would be interested in becoming more of an expert in the terrain on which I am operating my startup venture, whatever it is. I would form another roundtable group as a community of practice. I would not limit it to only entrepreneurs, but people with some sort of entrepreneurial background. I think it would be less lockstep, less synchronous. So there are some ideas that we can bounce around. The first experiment was mandatory attendance because people here are horrible at that. It was a learning experience. I'm hoping that we can bring back the roundtable, but with a completely different kind of mindset from the top to bottom, in and out, left to right. But yeah, part of the value proposition is to be a part of this cadre of mentors or subject matter experts or entrepreneurs in residence was a term I was throwing around, which we really don't have here. So you should be able to engage with real entrepreneurs who are willing to help you. Now, if you want to have move here, bring your startup, become a local. Good luck. That's usually the path, right? So if you can actually say, we have entrepreneurs here who will not steal your idea, they will help you. The exchange is, of course, these mentors and entrepreneurs in residence can talk to you first. So they get sort of early access to potential opportunities, networking. There's being a part of the asset map has a certain amount of value. So asset map, by the way, another component that would fit into the in Las Vegas platform. Cafe Genius would be driving the collection and curation of an asset map. So that's something we'll talk about another time. That's the Genius Roundtable. Hopefully we'll figure that out. I think it's an essential thing, but I don't think people, just like a retrospective, I don't think the casual people that you might run into here understand it because it's a little bit more forward looking, a little bit more outside the box. Other stuff, there are 2 or 3 other projects. There are 3 technically. Other projects that I tabled a while back. I was working for Intel and I was always traveling, and I had just moved here after my house fire and all kinds of other chaos. So I was like, I have a full-time job. I'm going to be traveling. I can't really work on these. So they've been on the back burner. The water has boiled away on that back burner, all 3 back burners. And today is not the best day to try to refill those, although now that my water is back on, I can do that. So good for me. Sometimes you write ahead and then your water gets turned back on. That said, 2 of the ideas fit into the information sharing context directly, so they could be external modules. So I will say right now, one of them is related to food trucks. So if there's one of my ideas from time immemorial has been a better way to discover, locate, book, and interact with mobile vendors. So that can be integrated in, not as a direct component, but as a sort of how would I describe this? Almost like an RSS feed, right? Like featuring podcasts would be reading RSS feeds. Not quite that simple, but essentially a better way to elevate small business so that they are more visible. I will give you one example, see if this has happened to you. Occasionally, the local media will announce a new food truck in town. The 303 in the Cut, I think, is one that's gotten a lot of attention. They have 2 locations, so they have 2 food trucks. One of them is just north of where I live. It's I'm going to say it's about 2 miles walk or drive. I've walked by it once. They had a line formed that was quite impressive from the moment they were open. So good stuff. There was an article published about them. They were brand new food trucks. So where are they? How can you find them? Good luck. Food truck event this Thursday. Blah, blah. Okay, where's their website? We forgot. Which food trucks are going to be there? Don't know. What was that food truck I had yesterday? It was right here. Don't know. They didn't update their Instagram page or whatever. I don't even know the name of the truck. It was pink. So there's this huge problem that small business owners kind of get if they're brick and mortar and they're stuck in the ground. But if you're moving, you're a mobile vendor of some sort, you got to contend with fees and licenses and permits and getting gouged by the event organizer and their rev share and other policies. And, I got to use your cash register. And, my engine is having problems. My transmission just fell out of my vehicle. I got to get a new Ansel system because the fire code has changed. The list goes on and on. So mobile vendor discovery is always a challenge. Even First Friday does a horrible job. They charge a ton of money to have food trucks, and people believe that First Friday is where food trucks are. Should be the other way around. Mobile vendors in general make First Friday go. I've taken photos of the location without food trucks, and it's a parking lot. It's empty. Go figure. So food trucks will be one of the stars of the show from an external standpoint. There's another thing I have that would fit with the food truck thing, and it would also fit into the data sharing platform thing. And then there's a third one that might actually just merge in as a sort of a native module, native feature directly in the platform. We'll see. The challenge, as always, is to make a solo project go. Is not impossible to do this. It is possible. There are tons of solo projects out in the world. If you have infinite time, it's a lot easier, of course. But it can be tricky for many distractions that sort of block progress. I was very near launching version 1 of my food truck platform. I would go to food truck events and have people test it and try it out and sit in that coffee shop and have 25-cent refills all day working on different features and stuff. We had our owners association that I was running as well. And so lots of learning, lots of practical co-creation. Then I had a house fire and everything got on the back burner. And then I moved to Vegas and then all kinds of chaos. Then I got a job with Intel. So it's been properly resting, I suppose, but also it's kind of annoying. So it'll be nice to see if I can get that out into the world. And once again, not Vegas specific. So ideally it would catch on for others to use as well. There is no shortage of people who have attempted to write food truck applications that didn't know anything about food trucks. There was a really trendy time in the 2000s, so in the late 2000s, 2008, 9, 10, 11, mid 2000s, sorry. It's late 2000s if you say 2008 is not 2002. But anyway, so 2000, 8, 10, everybody was writing food truck apps in Silicon Valley, of course. And so every food truck event, there'd be somebody coming up with like, hey, do you want to sign up for my new app? And it was just a Twitter scraper or something. So my approach was very different. It was very mobile vendor first and all that. So I would like to see if that idea would work. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, we'll see. I think I would like to get my ideas some sunlight and see what happens. Anyway, I'm going to close today's episode with this collective idea that I've had for years, like decades. I was in Silicon Valley many years ago. Probably, I think before I moved. Before I moved in 2001. So this was in the late 90s. And I was speaking to the guy who hired me out of college, Andrew. And I said, he had moved, he kind of semi-retired and he was working on some things. I said, it'd be interesting. We know a lot of people. What if people that had ideas, maybe if you know a hardware designer and a software person, a user interface designer and a marketing person and a social media, which was not as popular back then, of course, but a person to do the marketing and engagement, PR, Marcom, I guess, are the old ways of describing those. So what if you had this collection of people, but they have their own version of ideas? Like, I'd like to build a platform for Marcom automation, but I don't know how to do it. Like, well, I know how to do it, but I don't know how to do Marcom. So join forces, right? You can do the Marcom for our effort, and I will do the platform development for your effort that I can also use. So if you have a collection of people with different skill sets, different ideas, different focal areas, and you collaborate. So I would always say you throw the ideas in the middle. You implement all the common things. You need a database, you need a website, whatever it is. So you build up a platform, if you will, that would service all of the ideas in some way. Then you can focus on the individual ideas, and the winning idea or ideas are the ones where you spend most of your time. So from there, you've basically formed a startup based on complete practicality. Rather than people joining your startup, you all joined a startup together and you brought your idea to the table and so on. Now, this sounds utopian and it probably is, but I think because Vegas is never going to be Silicon Valley. So there's not like this waiting pool of software engineers. Tell me what your app idea is. People would like to think you can go to a boot camp for 6 or 18 or 20 weeks or whatever it is. Not quite that easy either. Truly experienced people are probably working on their own things, but they probably have their own ideas. I've known people here in Vegas who are, it's one or two people working on a startup idea. They're not really making any traction. They're not moving forward, not advancing their cause. Arguably, I am one of them because there's always those distractions. So if you actually form collectives of people all with something to contribute in the way of idea, like entrepreneurial idea, and capability to contribute to their own idea, or if not, again, like the Marcom thing. I'm not a programmer, I'm not a coder. Well, I'm not a Marcom person. So if you can actually find intersectional collaborations, a collective idea might be interesting. So I'm just going to plant that seed right now. I think it's something to explore. There has to be a certain level of intellectual curiosity involved. And so just like the round table, I think there would be a similar challenge getting people to participate who are serious, who are not merely showing up for the free food. Yeah, welcome to Vegas. But that's, I'm going to leave that there for now, but I think it's something worth talking about into the future. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you, because now the water's on. I can go have a drink. And no, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. The the don't forget the two shameless promotion links: buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. Check those out for links. Eventually, I will have more of these things up and running. The seminal component that we're building for Innovate for Vegas, Agile for Volunteers, we're calling it, will ideally make it easier to invite collaboration from non-local participants who can take an interest in really making the most of their volunteer time and maybe collaborating not only here in Vegas, but where they are. And we can, kind of like my collective idea, like you bring some of your ideas, we have some of our ideas, maybe everybody wins. I know, it's crazy. That's where I'll leave it today. Let there be water. Thanks for listening. Take care.